Lin Jing never thought that he would have something to do with a divine artifact or inheritance secret realm that would be very intimidating when he heard it. His biggest dream here is to take Silver, leave this small mountain village where birds are not shitty, and go to the big city to see the hot things, saying that he might be able to do a small business. But sometimes I like to joke with you. That morning, before dawn, Lin Jing was woken up by his father, saying that the iron craftsman was piled up like the mountain, so that he could come back from behind the mountain with some mines. Lin Jing rubbed her sleepy eyes and muttered that she was not full, but she still carried the basket out of the door. He knew his father's temper and would not go to work, so he would wait for him when he went back. The mine at the back of the mountain is a distance from the village, and the road is difficult to walk, and it is full of thorns and gravel. Lin Jing left for most of the time, sweating heavily, and finally arrived at the familiar mine. He put down the basket, took out the small iron bar, and was about to start. He suddenly realized that there was a stone head that looked not very close on the stone wall. The surface of the stone is as smooth as if it has been polished, and there are some strange flower patterns on it, like symbols or ancient words. Although Lin Jing didn't know the words, he could also see that this thing was different from ordinary rocks. He felt curious in his heart, couldn't help but walk over, and reached out to touch it. The moment my finger touched the stone, a cold chill rolled into his fingertips, as if he was being pulled hard by something. His entire brain was almost standing still. He was shocked and quickly turned his hand back, but the stone suddenly lit up and emitted a dark blue light, illuminating the surrounding trees like ghost fire. "What's the matter?" Lin Jing sat on the ground in a startled manner, his heart beat like a drumbeat. He wanted to run, but his legs were soft like cotton and he couldn't use any force. The blue light became brighter and brighter, and the patterns on the surface of the stone seemed to be alive and began to flow slowly, forming a huge round pattern. Then, the stone wall began to shake, making a low sound of rushing birds, as if something was about to break out of the ground. Lin Jing widened his eyes and looked at a crack in the middle of the stone wall, revealing a dark passage. There was a series of low-pitched voices in the passage, as if someone was talking, or as if it was a singular voice. It couldn't hear the specific content clearly, but it made people's skin numb. He swallowed, his heart stooping in his heart whether to run away or see what was inside. "Lin Jing, you don't encounter this kind of thing every day. Maybe there are treasures in it." He slandered himself, lifted the iron on the ground, gritted his teeth and walked in. The passage was so dark that I couldn't see my 5 fingers. The air was filled with a damp earthy smell, and there was a strange smell that could not be described. Lin Jing groped carefully and moved forward. He stepped on some gravel when he was under his feet, making a crisp sound, which was particularly harsh in this quiet space. He walked for a few steps and suddenly heard a slight response coming from the front, as if someone was talking in a low voice. "Who is there?" Lin Jing shouted with a whisper, but the sound replied in the passage for several times, but no one answered. His heart was bleak, but he still walked forward with his head stiff. It took no time for a glimmer of light in the passage, like the light of a torch. He accelerated his pace and finally walked to the light source. He found that it was not a torch at all, but a piece of crystals floating in the air, emitting soft white light. Below the crystal stone is a huge stone chamber. In the center of the stone chamber is a broken sacrificial fortress, with black pieces the size of a palm on it. The surface of the fragments is filled with dark red light, like a living thing, sank. Although Lin Jing didn't see any world, he also felt that this thing was definitely not simple. He wanted to get closer and look, but suddenly he heard a rapid stomp sound from behind him, and then an old voice shouted in a low voice, "Boy, don't move. That thing is not something you can touch." Lin Jing was shocked and turned over suddenly. He saw an old man with white hair standing at the entrance of the passage, wearing a broken gray robe, and holding a curved wooden stick in his hand. His eyes were so sharp that he could see through people. Although he looks quite old, his aura is not weak, as if he can knock people down at any time. "Who are you? Why did it suddenly appear and scary?" Lin Jing held the iron and looked at the other party vigilantly. The old man ignored his problem and walked straight into the stone chamber, staring at the black fragments on the fort, his face becoming unusually solemn. He murmured in a low voice, "Sure enough, the seal of the artifact fragments began to relax. This film inherits the secret realm and is finally about to open." "What artifact? What secret realm? Tell me clearly." Lin Jing was soaked, but looking at the old man's expression, he always felt that things were not simple. The old man turned over, looked at Lin Jing, and had a slight exploration in his eyes. He was silent for a moment before opening his mouth. "Boy, what's your name? How did you find this place?" "My name is Lin Jing. I am the one who fired the iron in the village. I came to the mountain to pick up mines. When I met the stone light, I would come in and take a look." Mr. Lin Jing answered realistically, still a little scared. "Lin Jing." The old man muttered his name, and his eyes suddenly became deeper, as if he had remembered something. He walked to Lin Jing, stretched out his hand and pressed it on his shoulder, closed his eyes and felt it for a moment, then suddenly opened his eyes and said in surprise, "The blood of the guardian? How could it be? You actually have this power. What bloody blood? Why don't I understand what you are saying?" Lin Jing was even more confused by him, but the force from his shoulders made him unable to move. The old man opened his hands easily, and the expression on his face became complicated. He sighed and said, "Boy, you may not know that you have already entered a huge trouble. This place is called the Secret Land of Inheritance, which is a place where the ancient guardians left behind. And their blood flows on you, which means you are qualified to compete with the artifact, but it also means that you will become the goal of countless people." Lin Jing was stunned for a moment, and only thought in her heart that this old man was afraid that there was something wrong with his brain, and he said it the same as the real one. But looking at the other party's true eyes, he felt that things seemed not that simple. He slapped his head and asked, "What is this magic weapon? Is it worth it? Also, who are you?" The old man snorted and said in a bad mood, "The artifacts are not something you can measure with silver. They are the foundation of the sky. The 7 supreme artifacts, which control the power of the spirit, are enough to change the balance of the world. But it is precisely because this power is too powerful that after the ancient catastrophe, they were scattered all over the place and sealed in the secret realm. Only those who have tried their own way can get their approval. As for whom I am..." The old man turned his head, and a silkworm flashed in his eyes. "You can call me to be a slaughter, an old immortal who is guarding this secret realm." Lin Jing heard that he didn't understand, but he thought that nothing was just a joke. He pointed to the black fragments on the fort and asked, "Is this thing the artifact you call it?" He pointed the head a little and was heavily verbally, "This is just a small piece of the artifact, but even so, its power is not something you can bear. You just touch the stone tablet and open the entrance to the secret realm, and it has been marked by its will. From now on, you can't escape." "Can't escape? What does it mean?" Lin Jing felt nervous and felt that this sounded badly. He sneered and said, "It means that the forces outside have long been focused on the inherited secret realm. They will find you at all costs, pull you and kill you, and will never make you happy. And this secret realm will not let you go easily. If you want to survive, you have to pass the test, otherwise, there is only a dead end." Lin Jing heard the sound of his back, and his brain became a group. He is just an ordinary village boy. Why did he suddenly become a bloody messenger? He still has to fight with others? He wanted to say that he was not fucking, but looking at the look of Wang's eyes obviously wasn't like he could refuse. "Bold, don't be afraid of me. I'm just a squeezer and can't do anything. How can I use any tricks?" Lin Jing looked bitterly and tried to find a reason to recommend it. He glanced at him and said lightly, "I won't learn it. Since the blood has chosen you, it's your life. From now on, I will teach you some basic things, and the code will make you not die too fast. But remember, no one can walk for you in this way." Lin Jing wanted to say something, but when he spoke, he tried to kill him again. He looked down at his hand, and the chill suddenly flashed in his brain when he just touched the stone tablet, and there was a feeling that he couldn't say in his heart, as if something was summoning him. At this moment, the stone chamber suddenly shook violently, and the black fragments on the fort shone brightly, and a sharp sound of sharp birds came out. After his face changed, he shouted, "No, the fragmented seal has been touched, and the first trial in the secret realm is about to begin." Try to have a dream? What to have a dream? Lin Jingzhang didn't react yet, and saw the walls around the stone chamber beginning to crack, and countless black shadows were diamond out of the cracks, scattering towards them like living things. Those shadows have no physicality, but they exude a heavy killing, making people creepy. Don't be stunned, pick up your iron bars and prepare for a fight. He flapped a wooden stick, and a blue light lit up on the head of the stick, forming a light curtain in front of them. This is the guardian phantom of the secret realm, and you can try to explore the will and power of the intruders. If you can't get over this, don't think about the road ahead. Lin Jing was so scared that his palms were covered in sweat, but as he watched the shadows swaying over, he could only hold the iron and pull out a sturdy streak that he thought was very bad. He was beating his heart, but he knew that regressing now must be a dead end. The first black shadow swept in front of him, and Zhang Kai's mouth widened and screamed, as if he could directly drill into his brain, causing a splitting pain. Lin Jing tied his teeth and slammed the iron rod hard. He found that the black shadow was not under any force at all. The iron rod penetrated it directly, as if it was hitting the air. Use your will to fight it. These phantoms are not real, they rely on invading your mind. Lu shouted loudly from the side, and at the same time, he slammed the wooden stick and dispersed a few black shadows. Will? How to use it? Lin Jing was so anxious that he was sweating heavily, but suddenly a strange feeling flashed in his brain, like the power that had just touched the stone tablet. He subconsciously closed his eyes and tried to concentrate, imagining that he could turn these dark shadows away. A strange thing happened, and a faint light suddenly appeared in his brain, as if guiding him to concentrate his strength in his hands. When he opened his eyes again, the iron barely had a faint blue light. Although it was weak, it made him feel a different feeling. He yelled and swung the iron again. This time he finally hit the black shadow and made a sound of shock. The black shadow was directly disintegrated and turned into a black smoke and disappeared. Lin Jing was stunned for a moment and shouted excitedly, "It's done. Old man, I hit it. Don't be proud, this is the beginning." Lu snorted coldly, his eyes swept deep into the stone chamber, as if he had noticed something more dangerous was approaching. There were more and more black shadows in the stone chamber, and screams came one after another, as if they were in vain. Although Lin Jing had just found a little feeling, he had no experience and started to pant in a few seconds. Several black shadows were caught by his body, which made him grin. At this moment, a rapid sound of footsteps suddenly came from the entrance of the stone chamber, followed by a cold sound. It seems that I was coming at the right time, and the silence here is indeed quite strong. Lin Jing and Lu turned around at the same time, and saw only a woman in black tight clothes standing at the entrance, covering her face with a half-faced face, revealing only a pair of cold eyes. She held a dagger in her hand, and a dangerous breath spread on her body, as if she could be killed at any time. "Who are you?" Shun raised his eyebrows, with a sense of vigilance in his language. The woman glanced at them, and her eyes finally fell on Lin Jing, and she said lightly, "My name is Yueli. Come to this secret realm to find something. It seems that you need help." Before Lin Jing could open his mouth, Yueli had already flashed and rushed into the group of black shadows. A cold light was drawn by the dagger, and several black shadows were instantly shattered and turned into black smoke and dispersed. Her movements were so fast that people couldn't see clearly, as if she had known these things for a long time. Lin narrowed his eyes and said to Lin Jing in a low voice, "This woman is not simple, don't trust her at all. But at the moment, we really need help, let's see what she wants." Lin Jing pointed a little, and felt a little scared. He always felt that Yueli, those dark shadows, and even the entire secret realm, had bigger secrets. And he, a little iron craftsman, seemed to have been rolled into a storm that could not be removed. Lin Jing stood in the middle of the stone chamber, and the iron bars in his hands still had a faint blue light. Several scratches on his body were hurting with pain. he gasped. His brain had not yet passed through the turmoil, and his eyes couldn't help but fall on the woman named Yueli. She stood far away, and the short dagger in her hand flashed with the cold light. After a few clean and neat actions, she had already cleared the dark shadows around her, as if she had long thought it was normal for such a scene. What is this woman? Lin Qing murmured in her heart, not daring to ask too much. He glanced at the old man Lu and found that the old man's face was not good-looking, and his eyes were filled with custards. He obviously had no good feelings for Yueli, who suddenly came in. "Thank you for your help." I finally opened my mouth. My voice was low and I couldn't hear any emotion. "However, this secret realm is not a place to enter at will." "How did you find this?" Yueli smiled lightly. Her voice was cold, as if she was mocking. "Old man, you are not the only one at the entrance to the secret realm. I have my way. As for what it is, I don't have to tell you," she said. Her eyes turned to Lin Jing again, and looked up and down, as if she could see through what he was thinking. How come this little brother, who doesn't look like a cultivator, would he fight with these guardian phantoms? Lin Jing was a little uncomfortable when she stared at her. She slapped her head and said embarrassingly, "I just came in by mistake and didn't know anything. I just rely on this old man to teach me." Yueli raised her eyebrows and didn't ask anymore, but said lightly, "No matter who you are, the situation is not good now. These phantoms are just the first test in the secret realm, and there are even more nuisances behind it. If you want to go out alive, it's best not to hide it." "Hide it?" Lu snorted coldly, and the wooden stick in his hand knocked on the ground lightly, making a sound. "Little girl, don't say it too much. Since you know that this is a secret realm trial, you should also know that none of the people entering this place are simple characters. If you want to cooperate, you have to show your sincerity first, right?" Yueli seemed to have expected that he would say this, and she was not worried. She took out a small jade plaque from her waist with a circle of complicated flower patterns on it, emitting a faint light. She lifted the jade token and said calmly, "This is spiritual jade, which can detect hidden mechanisms and spiritual waves in the secret realm. I came here to find something, and it may not conflict with your purpose. If I am willing to cooperate, I can help you through the trial in front of you." Lin Qing was stunned for a moment and muttered in her heart, "This jade token looks really not simple, but as a troll, how could he know these fancy and whistle things?" However, looking at the expression of Wang, she seemed to be a little interested in this jade token, and her eyebrows were slightly stretched. The spiritual jade is a rare thing. Lu pondered for a moment, and finally pointed at the head. "Okay, cooperate at the right time. But I warn you, don't play with flowers, otherwise I don't mind giving you a ride." Yueli smiled and didn't answer this, but just put away the jade token and turned around and looked deep in the stone chamber. At this moment, the walls around the stone chamber began to shake again. Although a lot of the black shadows that emerged from the cracks were cleared, there seemed to be more things approaching from the distance, and there was a sense of pressure in the air, making people unable to breathe. "The trial is not over yet, don't be stunned," Yueli reminded, and immediately flickered his body and walked towards the depths of the stone chamber first. Her pace was light, as if she was completely familiar with this environment, and she avoided the trap hidden on the ground with every step. Lin Jing looked at her back, feeling a little confused in her heart. He turned his head and asked, Can this woman really believe it? How can she think she has something to hide?" He glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Believe it or not, but she said it is not a time for internal struggle. The trial of the secret realm is not merciless. We have to survive first. Follow her and don't go around. The mechanism here is not something to play with." Lin Jing pointed his head, held the iron bar tightly, and followed Yueli forward. The light in the deep stone chamber became darker and darker, and the air became more humid, as if it had entered an underground cave. The ground under the feet began to become pitiful, and the sound of dripping water could be heard from time to time, which was particularly clear in the silence. Not long after leaving, Yueli suddenly stopped walking and raised her hands to signal them not to move. She squatted down, carefully observed the ground, then took out the piece of spiritual jade from her waist and stuck it lightly on the ground. The jade token emitted a faint light, as if it felt something. Then a circle of concealed runes appeared on the ground, forming a complex pattern. "It's true, it's all about it," Yuli said in a low voice, with a solemn expression in her language. "This is a spirit lock. When it touches, it will emit poisonous fog. We have to go over." "Bound over? There is only one road here." Lin Jing couldn't help but interrupt. Looking around, he found that there was no fork in this passage at all, and there were smooth stone walls on both sides, and there was no gap between them. Yuli ignored him, stood up, walked to the stone wall, and closed her eyes as if she was feeling something. After a while, she suddenly opened her eyes and the dagger in her hand suddenly stabbed into an inconspicuous small hole in the stone wall. With a light sound, the stone wall actually moved open, revealing a narrow sideway, which was pitch black inside, and could almost hear the sound. "Go here," Yuli said without looking back and took the lead in. Lin Jing was stunned and looked at this woman's ability a little more high. He followed the road into the sidewalk and found that the road was narrower than the previous passage. Both of them were free of charge, and there was a musty smell in the air, as if no one had walked past it for a long time. "This place feels more and more evil," Lin Jing muttered in a small voice, and he always felt unsteady in his heart. He held the iron bark's palms and his eyes were staring at Yuli in front of him, afraid that she would suddenly come. After about half a minute of walking, the side road finally reached the end, and a larger stone temple appeared in front of it. A huge stone statue stands in the center of the stone hall, carving a warrior holding a long spear, with a blurred face, but his atmosphere is unusually imposing. Under the stone statue, there were a pile of white bones scattered, and some were still covered with broken clothes, as if many people had died here. "Where is this? Why are there so many dead people?" One narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "This is the second test site in the secret realm, the test site for guarding the spear. Looking at this stone statue, it should be the image of the war god of the ancient Guardian clan. Those who can walk to this must pass its test, otherwise, they will become these white bones under their feet." "Exam? What kind of exam is it?" Lin Jing heard this and his brain was getting bigger. He was already exhausted when he hit those shadows. Are he still here now? Why is this secret realm without a head? Yuli didn't say anything, but walked to the stone statue and carefully observed the surrounding area. Her eyes finally fell on the long spear in the stone statue's hand, as if she had discovered something, and said in a low voice, "This long spear is not a decoration, it has spiritual waves on it, so it should be the key to the test. Don't be upset." Lu suddenly stopped drinking, and his language was filled with a hint of anxiety. "This experiment is not as simple as you think. Touching a long spear will awaken the will of the statue. You don't even have it stuck with it. What should I do? You can't just stand here, right?" Lin Jing couldn't help asking. Although he didn't understand any spiritual will, he also knew that standing among these piles of bones was actually not a good idea. After a while, Lu was silent. He finally opened his mouth. "Testing is impossible, but it is not impossible to avoid it. Lin Qing, you have the blood of the Guardian, and the will of this statue should be able to sense your existence. You try to get close to it, use your power to share it with it, or perhaps reduce the difficulty of the test. Me? Together? Old man, don't cheat me." Lin Jing's face turned green when he heard this. He didn't forget that the shadows almost broke his brain, and now he is even more cruel. He is really afraid that his life will be lost. "What are you afraid of?" "I'm here." Lu glared at him without any hesitation. "Aside, if you don't try, we can't get out of one. Do you want to be trapped here?" Lin Jing gritted his teeth. Although there were 100 people in his heart who were reluctant to do so, he knew no other way. He took a deep breath and slowly walked towards the stone statue. Every step seemed to be stepping on the tip of a knife, his heart beating like a drum beat. When he walked under the stone statue and raised his head to look at the blurry face, he suddenly felt an invisible pressure coming, as if someone was talking in his brain and asking some questions that he didn't understand. He subconsciously closed his eyes and tried to concentrate and find that familiar power as he had done before when he was dealing with the shadow. Sure enough, the faint light appeared in the brain again, as if guiding him to gather his strength all over his body. He opened his eyes quietly and found a faint blue light on his palm. Although it was weak, it made him feel relieved. At this moment, the long spear in the stone statue's hand suddenly lit up, and a low buzzing sound came out. The eyes of the statue also opened quietly, revealing a pair of red rays, as if they had come alive, staring straight at Lin Jing. "Boy, don't be distracted and calm your will," Yung said loudly behind, with a tight sound in the sound. Lin Jing bit his teeth tightly, forcing himself not to look at the red eyes, and focused on maintaining the blue light on his hands. He felt a powerful force storm from the stone statue, as if he was going to drill into his brain and try to tear his mind apart. A series of strange scenes suddenly flashed through his brain. Countless warriors were killed on the battlefield, the sky was torn apart by flames and thunder, and a huge artifact floated in the air, scattering the breath of destroying the sky and the earth. "What is this?" Lin Jing was shocked, but immediately realized that this might be the memory of the guardian or the will of the artifact. He forced himself to calm down and tried to accept these pictures instead of being crushed by them. The red eyes of the stone statue gradually dimmed, and the buzzing sound on the long spear slowly subsided. After a while, the stone statue finally remained completely calm, as if he had recognized his existence. Lin Jing relaxed her voice and felt that her whole person had been hollowed out, and she almost stood firm. "It's done!" The voice of Wang came from behind, carrying a sense of relief. "Boy, I'm very busy. The will of the stone statue has recognized your blood, and I've tried to pass." Lin Jing wiped his sweat, turned to look at Lu and Yueli, and reluctantly smiled. Is it over? There's nothing else, right?" Yueli walked forward, looked at him in confusion, and said in a low voice, "I've tried it, but this is just the beginning. The stone statue recognizes you, which means that the road behind will be even more dangerous. Are you ready?" Lin Jing's heart sank. Before he could answer, he heard a deep sound of a silence from the stone hall, as if something huge was moving. The wall behind the stone statue was cracked and exposed a deeper passage, with dark red light scattering inside, like an entrance to the ground. Wang's face became even more solemn, and he said in a low voice, "This is the road to the core of the secret realm, and the real artifact fragments are there. But I have to remind you that once you go in, there is no way out. The force outside will soon catch up, and we have to get the fragments before them." "The power outside?" Lin Jing was stunned. He suddenly remembered the words that Lu said before, and he had any bad premonition in his heart. "It's right." Yuli took the words and was cold. "The people of the Shadow Alliance have long been eyeing this secret realm. Their leader, the Bloodblade Venerable, is not a good character to mess with. If they were asked to take the lead, we wouldn't be left with a scum." Lin Jing heard the sound of his back, and his brain became a group. But he was a slaughter. Why did he get into such a fatal matter? But looking at the expressions of Lu and Yueli, he also knew that now was not the time to retreat. He held the iron bar tightly and gritted his teeth and said, "What are you waiting for? Let's go." The three of them glanced at each other and walked into the dark red passage. The air in the passage was extremely heavy, and every step seemed to be stepping on the heartbeat, making people unable to breathe. Lin Jing was drumming in his heart, but he couldn't help feeling that the power in his body seemed to be getting stronger as he went deeper, as if he was being attracted by something and could not resist. The passageway had a whisper, as if someone was calling, or as if he was warning. Lin Jing didn't know what was waiting for them, but he knew that there was no possibility of turning back on this road. Lin Jing walked in the dark red passage. The stone slabs under his feet were as cold as if they could suck their bones, and there was an indescribable sense of pressure in the air, which made him feel his heart was tightened by something every step. The stone walls on both sides of the passage are full of ancient runes, emitting faint light, flowing slowly like a living thing. At noon, you can hear low voices coming out of the walls, and you can't hear the specific content clearly, but it makes people's skin numb. This ghost place is getting more and more evil. Lin Jing muttered in a low voice, holding the iron in his hand tighter, as if this could make him feel weak. He secretly glanced at Yuli and Lu who were walking in front of him, and found that the faces of both of them were not very good-looking, especially Lu, with tight eyebrows and a hint of uneasiness in his eyes. "Don't be distracted, concentrate," Wang reminded in a low voice, with a hint of anxiety in the voice. "This road leads to the core of the secret realm. The power of the artifact fragments will become stronger and stronger, and the invasion of the will be even more harmful. If you are unstable, you may be swallowed at any time." "Swallow? Old man, don't scare me." Lin Jing said this in his mouth, and he was already scared. He remembered the messy scenes that had passed through his brain when he tried to do a stone statue. The feeling of being forced into his memory is still scared. Yuli walked in front, her steps were still stable, and the spiritual jade in her hand was constantly emitting a glimmer of light, as if she was exploring something. She suddenly stopped walking, turned to Lin Jing, and said in a cold manner, "You have the blood of the guardian on you, and the will of the artifact will be the first to you. No matter what you see or hear, don't believe it, don't think about it, otherwise no one can save you." Lin Jing pointed a little, but she was not sure. He was a slaughter and knew nothing. Now he had to deal with these scattered things, which was more difficult than climbing the sky. But at this point, he knew that there was no way out and could only walk forward with his head. The passage becomes narrower and narrower, and the air becomes more and more heavy, as if you have to breathe as much as possible. After about half a minute of leaving, a ray of light finally appeared in front of me, and the dark red light became more and more dense, dyeing the entire channel like blood. Lin Jing's heart beats faster and faster, and he felt a powerful force waiting for them in front, like a giant beast that could crush everything. "It's here," Lu said in a low voice, with a trembling sound, not fear, but a kind of suppressed excitement. He stopped and stared at the front. There was a huge underground cave. There was a huge black crystal floating in the middle of the cave. The surface of the crystal stone was flowing with dark red rays, as if the heart was pounding. "That's artifact fragments?" Lin Jing widened his eyes and felt an invisible pressure spread out from the crystal, as if he could directly drill into his brain, making his knees soft and almost kneel down. "It's right, this is the core fragment of the 7 major artifacts, the blade of the sky." Lu's voice was low, carrying a sludge of Sam's. It was once the strongest weapon of ancient guardians, able to tear the sky, but it also brought no disaster. Now, its power is sealed in this secret realm, and only those who try it in the final attempt can get its recognition. "Last trial? Is there any more?" Yuli glanced at him coldly and said, "A magical artifact is not something you can take at will. It will test your mind, strength, and determination. If you can't get through this, you will not only not be able to get the fragments, but you will have to spend your life." Lin Jing swallowed, his heart bulged, but looking at the crystal, he felt a familiar slogan again, as if the blood in his body was restless, urging him to get closer. He gritted his teeth and asked, "What should I do?" "You can't just watch this, right?" After a moment of silence, he finally opened his mouth. "The rules for the test are very simple. They are close to the crystal and receive the will test of the artifact. But I have to remind you that this test is not something you can do with ease. It will dig out the deepest fear and desire in your heart, so that you can face yourself. If you are not ready, you will still be able to withdraw now." "Exit? Old man, what are you kidding?" Lin Jing smiled bitterly. "I've walked here, and the people outside are still waiting to kill me. Isn't quitting just waiting to die? Okay, fight." I slapped my head a little, and didn't say anything else, but just patted him on the shoulder, as if I was giving him encouragement. Yu Liji stood aside, looking at Jingshi with her eyes in a mess, as if she had remembered something, and there was a burst of pain in her eyes, but she soon covered it up again. Lin Jing took a deep breath and walked slowly towards the crystal stone. Every time he took a step, the pressure became stronger, as if someone had a big shot and smashed him into his heart. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself not to think about the messy things, and felt the faint blue light in his body, hoping that it could help him pass by. When he finally walked to the crystal stone, only a few steps away, the crystal stone suddenly burst out with a strong light, and the dark red collar seemed to have come alive, quickly rolling into a huge net, covering his entire personal cover. Lin Jing didn't react yet, and felt a pain in her brain, as if she was being torn open by something. Then her eyes went dark and she fell into darkness. "Lin Jing, why are you here?" A low and empty voice echoed in his brain, as if it was coming from all directions, and there was no source at all. I'll get the artifact." Lin Jing replied subtly, but the sound echoed in the darkness, which seemed unusually weak. "Get the magical artifact? Ha ha. You are just a mortal. Why do you think you are qualified to control my power?" The voice was ridiculed. Then a light suddenly appeared in front of Lin Jing's eyes. Then the picture changed. He found that he was standing on a ruin, the sky was torn apart by flames and thunder, and the ground was covered with bodies and broken weapons, as if he had just experienced a war that destroyed the sky and earth. "Where is this?" Lin Jing was shocked, and immediately found a huge figure standing far away, holding a huge dark red blade, and a terrifying breath radiated all over his body. The figure turned over, revealing a blurred face, but his eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, staring at him straight. "Do you want my power? Then you prove that you are qualified." The figure growled, and immediately slashed the giant blade. A dark red sword light slashed towards Lin Jing, so fast that it could not be avoided. "Damn!" Lin Jing screamed in surprise, subconsciously lifting the iron rod and slamming it in front of him, but the sword light directly penetrated the iron rod and slashed hard on him. He felt a pain in the striking pain, and his whole person was chopped out and fell heavily to the ground, making his breathing difficult. "With this ability, can you dare to try to control the blade of the sky?" The figure sneered and walked towards him slowly, making the ground tremble with every step, as if the god of death was approaching. Lin Jing was sweating profusely in pain, and suddenly felt unwilling to accept it. He gritted his teeth and stood up, shouting, "I'm not here to die. I want to make me realize that there is no door." He closed his eyes and tried to wake up the blue light in his body. Although it was weak, it was like a life-saving straw, making him feel a sense of hope. When he opened his eyes again, the iron in his hand immediately blew a layer of blue light. Although it was not as good as the figure's atmosphere, it gave him a little more confidence. He yelled, rushed towards the figure, and smashed the iron hard at the other side. Although he knew that he was not the opponent, he refused to retreat. The sword light collided with the blue light, and a harsh sound of stinging birds appeared. Lin Jing was shocked again, with several more scars on his body, but he did not fall down. He stood stubbornly, staring at the figure, as if he was telling the other party with his eyes that he would not give up. The figure stopped, was silent for a moment, and finally a low laugh. "Fun, a mortal actually has such a will. Maybe you are qualified to accept my exam." As the voice fell, the ruins and figures in front of him suddenly disappeared. Lin Jing realized that he had returned to the cave, and the red light of the crystal stone gradually dimmed, as if he had recognized his existence. "Boy, you're fucking well." The voice of Wang came from behind, carrying a sense of relief. "The will of the blade of the sky recognizes you, and this fragment is yours." Lin Jing turned over and smiled reluctantly, but before he could speak, he heard a rapid sound of footsteps coming from the entrance of the cave, and then a cold sound came out. "It's worthy of being the guardian's blood, and he really has some ability. Unfortunately, the Blood Blade Master, are going to settle for this fragment." Lin Jing's heart sank. When he turned around, he saw a middle-aged man in a black robe standing at the entrance. His face was as white as a dead person, his eyes were as sharp as a knife, and a suffocating murderous atmosphere appeared on his body. Behind him, there were several men wearing black robes, each of whom was very energetic, and it was obviously not a good character to mess with. Bloodblade Venerable. Wang's face became unusually difficult to see, and he said to Lin Jing in a low voice, "Be careful, this guy is the leader of the Shadow Alliance, and his strength is unpredictable. We have to be nervous about trying to take it off." "Take it off? Old man, do you think I will let you go?" The Bloodblade Venerable sneered, and with a swipe of his hand, a black spirit turned into a long whip, thrusting at them hard, so fast that he could not react. The whip hurriedly wielded the wooden stick, and the green light formed a light curtain in front, but the long whip directly tore the light curtain, and thrust it on the ground without any effort, making a huge sound, and a big hole was smashed into the stone slab. Damn, this guy is too fierce. Lin Jing was shocked and his back was swelling, his heart was pounding, but he also knew that it was not the time to retreat. He bit his teeth tightly, held the iron bars tightly, and was ready to fight. Yuli flashed and rushed to the front of the Blood Blade Venerable. The dagger rolled out a cold light and directly touched the other party's throat. However, the Blood Blade Venerable just slapped his body lightly and easily dodged. With a palm, Yuli was shaken and hit the stone wall. A silk of blood overflowed from the corner of her mouth. With this ability, how dare you fight with me? The Blood Blade Master snorted coldly, his eyes turned to Lin Jing, as if he had seen through his details. Boy, hand over the fragments, I can save you a life. Thank you. Lin Jing gritted his teeth and cut his teeth. Although he was afraid, he also knew that handing over the fragments was waiting for death. He subconsciously touched Xiang Jingshi and tried to wake up the power he had just gained. Sure enough, a dark red light gushed out of the crystal and surrounded him, making him feel an unprecedented power. Looking for death. The Blood Blade Venerable's face darkened, his body flashed, and directly rushed towards Lin Jing. The long black knife in his hand scattered a heavy killing, as if it could cut off everything. Lin Jing shouted loudly, and the iron immediately blew with a dark red light, hitting the other side. The two forces collided, and a thundering sound of thunder that shocked the earth. The entire cave began to shake, and the gravel kept falling from the top, as if it would collapse at any time. Lin Jing was shocked and took a few steps back. Blood was overflowing from the corners of his mouth, but the Blood Blade Venerable was not much better, and his face changed slightly. It was obvious that Lin Jing could take this blow. Interesting. It seems that the power of the fragments has begun to share the bird with you. The Blood Blade Venerable narrowed his eyes, with a burst of interest in his language, but this is the beginning. The next battle was simply a dream. The attack of the Blood Blade Venerable was so fast that it was hard to see clearly. Each knife brought the air of destroying the sky and earth. Although Lin Jing was blessed by the power of fragments, he had no experience and was covered in scars in a short time, and was panting. Lu and Yueli were also fighting to help each other, but they were also a little overwhelmed when facing powerful people like the Blood Blade Venerable. The battles in the cave became more and more intense, and the air was filled with a heavy smell of blood, as if life and death would be divided at any time. Boy, you won't be able to hold it for long. The Blood Blade Venerable sneered and slashed with another knife. This time the power was stronger than before. Lin Jing couldn't hide at all, and he was about to be chopped into 2.5. At this moment, a light suddenly flashed through his brain, as if the will of fragments was guiding him. He subconsciously closed his eyes, concentrated all his strength, and tried to merge the power of the fragments with his blood. When he opened his eyes again, the dark red light on the iron suddenly burst into pieces, forming a huge sword light, colliding head-on with the attack of the Blood Blade Venerable. Room. A loud noise, the impact wave formed by the collision of two forces directly collapsed most of the stone walls of the cave. The Blood Blade Venerable was shocked to retreat a few steps, and his face finally became solemn. This kid can actually expose the true power of fragments? The Blood Blade Venerable murmured in a low voice, a flash of jealousy flashing in his eyes. Lin Jing was panting, feeling that the power in his body was almost hollowed out, but he knew that this was the only opportunity to retreat to the other party. He gritted his teeth and held his body tightly, shouting, "Honey guy, if you want to get the pieces, just check me first." The Blood Blade Venerable was silent for a moment, and finally snorted coldly, put away his long sword, and said, "Okay, let you go today. But remember, I will take this fragment back sooner or later." After speaking, he flashed his figure and quickly disappeared from the entrance of the cave with his subordinates. Lin Jing relaxed her voice, and she seemed to be exhausted and sat on the ground. He looked at the crystal in his hand, and his heart was filled with scent. Although this thing saved his life, it also brought unrestrained trouble. He didn't even know whether he could bear this power. "Boy, you're doing it well." Lu walked over and patted his shoulder, with a hint of relief in his voice, "But the Blood Blade Venerable won't give up this, and next, you have to make more preparations." Yuli also walked over, wiped off the blood from the corner of her mouth, and said in a low voice, "The power of the fragment is not a grace, but a curse. Since you have chosen this path, you have to bear the consequences." Lin Jing pointed a little, but she was not sure. He looked deep in the cave, where there seemed to be a stronger force waiting for them. He held the crystal tightly and felt the blood in his body turbulent again, as if telling him that all this was not over. "Let's go, we have to leave this place," Lu said in a low voice. His eyes swept towards the gravel that kept falling on the top of the cave. "The secret realm has not been completed yet, but at least now, we won a game." The three of them supported each other and walked slowly out of the cave. The outside world is still full of unknowns, and the threat of the Blood Blade Venerable is still there, but Lin Jing knew that no matter how difficult the road ahead was, he had to continue. Because this is not only his fate, but also the fate of the vast sky.